This is the story of Golden Wind, an autumnal story by Evan Pritchard. Long ago, the guardian spirits of the woodlands were flesh and blood beings who walked and ran and danced through the forest for real. There was no word in English, but the Lenape called them Maysingwe, woodland spirits. They were 3 feet tall at full height and had mouths and noses that were a bit like the rabbit and a little bit like the human, with a small chin, but with prominent teeth, a distant cousin of the lemur, but standing upright on 2 feet. Their eyes were of various colors, mostly brown or golden, but very large. Some say female Maysingwe had wings, but males did not. Both genders wore leather clothing and often wore red cloth headbands to honor the spirit of Mother Earth. Though they were in physical form, few humans ever saw them unless they wandered deep into the woods and walked very quietly. If children or forgetful elders got lost in the woods, the Maysingwe would find them and help them get home. Otherwise, they kept their distance, as it was their mission as a clan to protect the forest from overgreedy hunters and gatherers, and from woodcutters as well. Rather than confront humans directly, they would steal the overzealous woodmen's axes and when they weren't looking, and steal the gunny sacks of grandmothers who were pulling up too many plants by the roots, or all of one species, leaving nothing for the future. These Maysingwe lived near the edge of the glacier, but the last days of the ice age brought hard times. Climate change is never easy. The temperatures rose and fell and rose and fell and rose and fell. No one could live an easy life. Things were out of balance. The megafauna, which the Maysingwe protected from spear hunters, were having a hard time surviving. Then came the summer of 13,000 BC. What a wonderful summer that was, but few were used to such heat. At sunrise on the first day of autumn, the temperature was finally perfect, and a girl, Maysingwe child, was born to the winds, a family of elementals. Spring Wind would become her beloved older sister, and Summer Wind her trusted older brother, and everything was in balance. Day and night were equal, hot and cold were equal, and there was an equal amount of red and green leaves in the trees. The sun shone with great golden light, which burst over the horizon and illuminated the fields with that light. A warm wind came, and then the child was born, so they called her Golden Wind. It was September 22nd, 13,000 BC, her birthday, and all things considered, she did indeed embody the spirit of autumn. When Golden Wind was only 9 centuries old, her mother gave birth to her younger brother, a boy they call Winter Wind, and hard times came again. Scientists now call this time the older dryads. A dryad is a wood nymph in Greek, so Golden Wind was obviously the older of the two. It was named after her. The climate changed again, and the sky became much colder, and the climactic Dow dropped several thousand points. This period of imbalance lasted 2 more centuries, but Golden Wind persisted. She prayed for the people and animals and birds, and in 12,000 BC, the sun came out again, and Golden Wind was happy. She was now 10 centuries old, and really starting to grow up straight and tall, helping to make the fire in the hearth, gathering pips of sawa for dinner, salad, and making teas for the family, and poultices to heal the injured. Then there were 12 centuries of real happiness, and Clovis people and others who had migrated to the eastern woodlands were also happy. Life was in balance again, and things were stable and serene. When she was 20 centuries old, she met an earth elemental named Rocky, and they got married and had children, Pixie, Nixie, and Trixie. Golden Wind would ride on the back of a stag when she went after mastodon poachers, and sometimes her 3 kids rode behind her, learning the ways. They sat beside her as she negotiated the great treaty of the new leaf, when at the equinox she declared equality between the green leaves and the red. Of course, it was a short-lived truce, and the green leaves all eventually joined the red ones that fell from power. But that's another story. Then a terrible thing happened in 10,800 BC. A terrible thing, a meteor hit nearby Greenland with an explosion that shook the entire earth. Golden Wind, now 29 centuries, gathered with her friends at the nest of an intuitive house wren who channeled the events, describing them blow by blow. They listened to the news feed from Kangerlussuaq, Greenland, Mi'kmaq word, as thousands of species died. She and her fellow Maysingwe siblings held hands and sang songs together and prayed for a miracle, but it did not come. The temperatures all over the world plummeted 27 degrees Fahrenheit, and many innocent plants died as the gray dust settled over every living thing. There was little to eat, especially in the northern latitudes. The wren passed out from exhaustion, and they all went home to start their lives over. Well, the hard-hearted winter wind took control of the entire Maysingwe world, reigning over a cold period now called the Younger Dryas, as winter wind was obviously the youngest of the wood nymphs in the family. After 20 centuries of progress, this new cold period sent them all back to the Ice Age. Clovis people, animals, birds were praying to Golden Wind desperately to bring balance to the earth and to their lives. Golden Wind had all she could do to take care of her 3 children, but worked tirelessly to answer their prayers. She helped those who were getting fevers to help find healing plants, helped those who were freezing find caves and kindling. She showed them how to make crags into rock shelters by making lean-tos made of cattail leaves and saplings. Everyone knew that Golden Wind was especially powerful on the autumnal equinox when the sun and the moon came into balance with the earth, and then day and night, green and red leaves, cold and warm, windiness and stillness, sun and shade were perfectly equal, and they waited for such golden days. But the need was too much. She was getting tired. It was September 22nd, 9000 BC, and her strength was giving out. 40 centuries old now and still in her prime, but the last 10 centuries of negotiating with her difficult brother, Winter Wind, had been hard on her. Even the hardy Clovis people, with all their hunting skills, had barely survived. Those fluted points she taught them to make lay scattered all over the ground with no one to use them. She gathered her 3 offspring around her bed and told them, though this was the time for letting go, a new age was coming that would be called the Holocene Age, a most wonderful of ages. Holocene means a whole new age in Greek. It was a language that would not even be invented for another 8 centuries, but she knew that. She told them they'd better let go of the woolly mammoth, the mastodon, the saber-toothed tiger, and all their megafauna, all their playmates that had long been their friends during the Pleistocene, but also told them all the wonderful plants and animals and birds that would start to appear very soon. She said that even though she and her many Maysingwe siblings might be dead, their spirits would live on in the land, and that only people with sensitive vision would be able to see them. But she added, around the autumnal equinox, when the earth is in balance, they would be able to see her clearly, as that was her time of power. During that time, a lot of things that had been broken during the year would be healed. Her spirit, now filled with white light, rose from the land and floated into the sky to the 12th level of clouds in the sky, and her friends knew that she would always be around to help them, and perhaps more powerful than ever. Just as she predicted, the Holocene Age broke forth on the following equinox, and the earth became much warmer than it had been in 70,000 years. All those years, Golden Wind had been watching over the earth, and she continued to be a guardian of the woodland places. She saw things were getting more and more out of balance, and she knew she needed someone of flesh and blood who could speak for her to make things right again. She knew that her story had become part of the Native American belief system. Surely they would help her. She spoke directly to many Native Americans all over Turtle Island, and yes, they could hear her words in their heads, but when they tried to repeat them to others, few would listen. Over time, people from all races and religions started to pray for balance on earth, and slowly, more and more started to see the spirit of Golden Wind out of the corner of their eye. The Romans called her family Venti. They knew. Sometimes these people were called crazy and worse things if they dared to try to convey a message from Golden Wind, especially in the English language, which had no word for Maysingwe or Manitou. Perhaps there were ways to convey the wisdom of balance other than in words, because words failed them. The Spanish flu of 1919 brought more turmoil. Golden Wind spirit stood guard as a Choctaw African-American boy was born in 1920 near Kansas City, Missouri, by the name of Charles Jr. His 18-year-old Choctaw mother, Addie, loved him very much, but when he was about 6, his father, Charles Parker Sr., left them both. Addie tried to raise him himself, but he was a handful. His mom prayed to the woodland spirits for help for her lost child. Suddenly, she had the idea, the one she thought was her own, to buy him an old saxophone for his 11th birthday, and he taught himself to play. The worried mom sent him off to a nearby Omaha reservation to be raised by her relatives there, and the hungry boy kept asking for chicken for dinner. So they called him Yardbird, their word for this invasive species, and later shortened it to bird. The Omaha children and parents prayed for this troubled youth, prayed to the Maysingwe, protector of lost children. The spirit of golden wind entered his saxophone and tried to bring balance into his life with mixed results, frankly. But the music he played healed millions of people by making beauty out of chaos. Charlie Parker Jr. died in 1955 at the age of 34, having won 4 Grammy Awards. In 1941, during World War II, the whole world was out of balance. That year, a boy named Jim Pepper was born in Portland, Oregon, to the Kaw and Muscogee Nation. He soon was touched by the spirit of golden wind. Knowing that words in English would never be enough, she inspired him to take up the saxophone as well. Golden wind inspired and whispered to Jim now and then and showed him how to bring balance into the lives of those around him. And he was very open with the public about his native ancestry and his belief in the Maysingwes and in nature spirits. He turned to his Muskegean language to help him express what Golden Wind was saying to him. She was saying, Wichi Tai To Himara Waranika Waranika, hey, 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 Noah. That's what she said. And he turned it into a hit song that is still sung today. 10 years after Jim's birth in the year 1951, a girl was born to another Muscogee Nation, that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and her name was Joy. Her father, Simon Ortiz, a poet, was no stranger to the Maysingwe, the little people, and they gave him ideas for his poems, but they also sometimes hit his socks just to keep him humble. He and his wife were going through hard times, but named their daughter Joy, as he and his wife were nonetheless overjoyed at her birth. As she grew up, she found she had to be tough to stand up to bullies in her school. While Joy was still a teenager, the spirit of Golden Wind came to her and asked her to speak on behalf of balance. And Joy Harjo, for that was her name, knew that the message of balance was not as exciting as other messages, such as fear and hatred. Joy turned to poetry to express balance, but realized that poetry only speaks to certain people. So she looked for a way to bring balance without words. She found an old saxophone in a pawn shop, and saving up her money, she bought the beautiful but beat up instrument, and Miss Harjo learned to play, hoping it would bring a little bit of balance to the world. That saxophone caught the spirit of golden wind. It was, after all, a golden wind instrument. Miss Harjo played it well and made many recordings and won many awards. And she is currently serving, to this day, at this moment, she's serving her second term as the Poet Laureate of the United States of America, and the first Native American to hold that title. Now it is September 22nd, 2021, Golden Wind's birthday, the woodland spirit, spirit of autumn, the spirit of balance. So let us honor her today and all good and helpful spirits of autumn. With the speeding of climate change and all the imbalance it brings, Golden Wind is boldly showing herself to all with the eyes to see and speaking to all with the ears to hear. And she speaks of restoring balance in all things and asks us to speak for her, whether it is through music, poetry, or art. She has been trying to protect the earth for 15,000 years and is not going to give up now. But she needs us. She needs our human voices, our flesh and blood, to rise up and work for change, a change that will lead us back into balance. So go ask her yourself. She is standing beside you.